Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are cracking the code on Canada's financial system, specifically that alphabet soup of registered savings plans. We're trying to get past the acronyms to figure out what these accounts actually do for your wealth, and maybe more importantly, what the strategic edge is for each one.
Exactly. I mean, these plans are basically personal investment wrappers. You register them with the CRA, and they give you tax benefits you just can't get in a regular savings account. We're talking about the RRSP, RRIF, TFSA, RESP, and the RDSP. So for anyone listening who wants to get up to speed quickly, the mission is pretty simple. Understand the core tax difference between them.
And that difference is everything. It really comes down to two models, doesn't it? Pay tax now or pay tax later.
Precisely. Some plans give you that immediate tax deduction when you put money in, which means you pay the tax later on when you withdraw it in retirement. And then others, they give you no tax break up front, but they guarantee that all the money, the growth, the withdrawals, it's all tax-free forever.
Okay, let's unpack that. I think we should start with the big one, the most foundational tool for long-term saving, the retirement savings model. So the registered retirement savings plan, the RRSP, why is this usually the first account people open?
Well, it's the instant gratification of a tax deduction. You put money into an RRSP, and that amount is deductible against your income for this year. So if you're in a high marginal tax bracket, that deduction can be incredibly valuable. It can even shift your whole income into a lower tax bracket.
Yeah.
And then the money just grows, tax deferred, until you pull it out.
So it's a delay tactic. It works best if your income is high today and you think it'll be lower in retirement, which is when you'll finally pay the tax. But let's get into the rules, because you need earned income to get contribution room. That's a key detail people miss.
It's a huge restriction. Your contribution room is the lesser of 18% of last year's earned income, or the annual dollar max. And earned income is very specific. It's salaries, wages, business income, alimony. But and this is critical investment income, so things like dividends or capital gains, and pension income do not count.
But hold on, why doesn't investment income count? Doesn't that mean someone who relies on passive income, maybe a retiree with a big portfolio but no salary? They're kind of stuck.
They absolutely are. The system is designed to incentivize saving from active labor. So if you've retired and your only income is from investments or pensions, you stop generating new RRSP room completely. That's why we always stress this point. No earned income, no new room.
The saving grace here, though, and I think this is a huge strategic nugget, is the carry-forward provision.
Yes. Unused room is carried forward forever. Think of it like a personal tax budget that never expires. So if Sarah earns, say, $40,000, she creates about $7,200 of room. But maybe she only saves $1,000 this year. That leftover $6,200 just rolls over. It accumulates for when she gets a promotion or just has a better year for saving. It keeps that tax benefit on the table for decades.
That's a massive safety net. But the system is pretty unforgiving if you go over. What's the penalty trap we need to watch out for?
So the CRA gives you a tiny one-time buffer. You can overcontribute by $2,000, but you can't deduct that amount. But if you go one single dollar over that $2,000 buffer, you get hit with a 1% penalty tax per month on the excess until you take it out. You have to be really meticulous about tracking the room the CRA gives you online.
And speaking of how these are structured, you can have a self-directed or a managed account, but the money is still in things like stocks or bonds. I know people sometimes have a bunch of RRSPs at different places. What's the smart play there?
Consolidation. You can have as many RRSPs as you want, so the key is to cut down on duplicate admin or trustee fees. People often consolidate to minimize that overhead, and when you move the accounts, you can usually do an in-kind transfer.
What does that mean, in kind?
It just means you move the actual assets, the stocks or mutual funds, without having to sell them first. It keeps your portfolio intact.
Okay, before we leave the savings phase, we have to talk about the home buyer's plan and the lifelong learning plan. People call them loopholes, but they feel more like a strategic, interest-free loan from your future self.
That's the perfect way to put it. They let you pull funds out tax-free for a first home or for education, as long as you repay them on a very strict schedule. If you miss a payment, that amount gets added to your taxable income for the year.
Ouch.
Yeah, so you get hit with the tax you were trying to defer. You have to treat it like a serious loan.
Now let's get into some advanced strategy. The spousal RRSP, the purpose here is pure tax planning, right?
Absolutely. It's designed for couples where one partner earns a lot more and is in a much higher tax bracket. The high-income spouse contributes using their room, but the account is in the lower-income spouse's name. So in retirement, When the money comes out, it's taxed in the hands of the lower income spouse.
Which lowers the couple's total tax bill. It's classic income splitting.
Exactly.
But the CRA put in a guardrail, didn't they? The attribution rule. Explain that, because it's a real pitfall.
The timing is critical here.
Hmm.
If the receiving spouse pulls money out in the year of a contribution or in the next 2 calendar years, that withdrawal is taxed back to the contributing spouse.
Ah, I see.
It stops people from just dumping money in to get a deduction and then immediately pulling it out at a lower tax rate. That money has to sit there for a full 2 calendar years after the last contribution was made.
So the RRSP is the savings phase. But once you hit a certain age, the mandatory income phase kicks in. The RIF, or Registered Retirement Income Fund.
Right, that transition has to happen by the end of the year you turn 71. You roll everything into a RRF or an annuity. The RRF lets your assets keep growing tax-deferred, but now the whole game shifts to withdrawal. You must start taking a minimum annual amount out.
And that minimum withdrawal, it speeds up as you get older. Don't just give us the percentages. What does that acceleration actually feel like for an investor?
It feels like less control and more pressure. At age 65, the minimum is around 4%, which is pretty manageable, but by the time you're 80, it jumps to over 7%.
Wow.
Yeah, that forces you to sell off more of your capital every single year.
Yeah.
It might mean you have to shift your portfolio from growth stocks into something more conservative, like bonds, just to meet that cash flow demand.
You mentioned there's a way to slow that down a little bit.
There is. You have the option to base your minimum withdrawal on the age of your younger spouse. Since the percentage is tied to age, using the younger spouse's age means you take out a smaller percentage each year. It makes the RIF last longer, which is a key tool for longevity planning.
Okay, let's hit a tax detail that I think a lot of people miss. In a non-registered account, capital gains get favorable tax treatment. Does that carry over into the RRIF?
No, and this is so important. In a RIF, the only tax advantage is the deferral of growth. When you withdraw money from a RRIF, it doesn't matter how it was earned, capital gains from stocks, interest from bonds, all of it is taxed as 100% ordinary interest income.
So you lose the preferential treatment for capital gains and dividends entirely.
You do. The only reason to hold equities in RIF is for their potential for higher growth inside the account, not for any tax break on the way out.
That really shifts the conversation. So if the RRSP and RRIF are all about deferral, let's talk about the complete opposite. The plan with no upfront deduction, but pure tax-free freedom later. We're pivoting now to the flexible future of the tax-free savings account, the TFSA.
The TFSA is the mirror image. You put money in with after-tax dollars, so the contributions are not deductible, but the payoff is huge. Every single penny of growth, capital gains, dividends, interest, and every withdrawal is permanently tax-free. It really is the Swiss Army knife of savings. You can use it for any goal.
And what's the biggest functional difference between a TFSA and an RRSP in terms of who can contribute?
The contribution room is completely separate from earned income. This is critical for people who are retired or not working. Remember Sandy, the retiree who got a big inheritance?
Right.
She has no earned income, so she can't put that money into an RRSP. But she can put that whole sum right into her available TFSA room, assuming she has it.
The withdrawal rules are the most interesting part of the TFSA. They're incredibly flexible, but they're also where most people get hit with a penalty.
The flexibility is amazing. You can take money out anytime, tax-free. But here's the key thing to manage your room. Whatever you withdraw gets added back to your contribution room, but not until January 1st of the next year.
On top of the new annual limit.
Exactly.
And that timing is precisely where the over-contribution trap is.
Absolutely. Say you pull out $5,000 in August. Then in October, you have some extra cash, so you put that $5,000 back in thinking you're just replacing it, but you haven't gotten that $5,000 of room back yet. If you didn't have enough other room to cover that second deposit, you've just triggered that 1% monthly penalty.
So the simple advice is just wait.
Just wait until the next calendar year to put money back in.
For retirees, the TFSA has another massive kind of hidden advantage.
It does. It's the protection of income-tested benefits. When you withdraw from a TFSA, that money is invisible to the government when they calculate things like old age security or OAS and the guaranteed income supplement or GIS. RIF withdrawals are fully taxable and can claw those benefits back. TFSA withdrawals don't touch them. It makes the TFSA a phenomenal tool for retirement income.
And what happens if the owner of a TFSA passes away?
There are two main paths. If a spouse is named as a successor holder, the account just rolls over automatically and stays tax-free. If someone else is named as a designated beneficiary, they get the full value, and they only pay tax on the growth that happened after the owner's death. It's worth noting, though, that in Quebec, it's a bit different. The account usually has to pass through the will.
Okay, so we've covered the big personal plans, but what if you need a tax shelter for a very specific goal, like a kid's education or long-term disability? That brings us to where the government really sweetens the deal with grants and bonds. Let's start with the RESP, the Registered Education Savings Plan.
The RESP is all about funding post-secondary education. Contributions aren't deductible, but the money grows tax deferred. The person who opens it is the subscriber. The child is the beneficiary. You can have an individual plan or a family plan where siblings can share the money.
And the big incentive is the Canada Education Savings Grant, the CESG. How does that work?
The CESG is the real driver here.
Hmm.
The federal government matches 20% of what you put in each year, up to a basic grant of $500, and unused CESG room carries forward, so you don't lose out if you miss a year.
And you don't have to pay it back.
Never, as long as the student enrolls in post-secondary. There's also the Canada Learning Bond for low-income families, which gives them money even if they can't contribute.
And the tax advantage is on the back end, kind of like the spousal RRSP idea.
Exactly. When the student is in school, the withdrawals, they're called EAPs, are taxed in the student's hands. And since most students have very low income, those payments often end up being totally tax-free. It's a super efficient way to pay for education as long as you stay under that $50,000 lifetime contribution limit per child.
Okay, finally, let's turn to the most specialized plan, the RDSP, the Registered Disability Savings Plan. This is for the long-term needs of individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, this is a powerful and I think underused tool. Eligibility is strict. You need to be eligible for the disability tax credit, be a Canadian resident, and be under 60 to open one. Contributions aren't deductible, but there's a huge lifetime private contribution limit of $200,000 with no annual limit.
And the incentives are just massive. We're talking up to a 300% government match.
That's the Canada Disability Savings Grant, or CDSG. Depending on family income, the government will match contributions at 100%, 200%, or even 300%. And there's also the Canada Disability Savings Bond, the CDSB, which is paid to low-income individuals even if they make no contributions themselves. These grants and bonds are paid until the beneficiary turns 49, and there's a vital 10-year carry forward, so you can catch up on a decade of mismatching funds.
That's a huge wealth builder. But what's the biggest catch? What's the clawback rule people forget about with the RDSP?
The clawback is the big one. If the plan is closed, or a major withdrawal is made, or the beneficiary stops being eligible for the disability tax credit, the government will claw back any grants and bonds that have been in the account for less than 10 years. So it encourages long-term saving.
Yeah.
You have to think of it as a serious decade-long commitment.
So let's pull all this together for the listener. What have we ultimately learned about optimizing Canadian savings?
We've learned that the structure, the wrapper, is everything. You now have a clear map of the tax identity of each plan. The RRSP is about deduction now and deferral for later. The TFSA is pure tax-free growth and withdrawal, perfect for flexibility and protecting government benefits. And the RESP and RDSP are these high-powered, incentivized plans using government money to fund very specific, important life goals.
And even though the investments inside the stocks, the bonds might look identical across all these plans, it's the strategic decision of which wrapper you use that determines your final tax outcome. These accounts are really just mirrors reflecting your priorities, your risk tolerance, your dedication to saving, your whole strategy for minimizing tax over your lifetime.
Indeed. It all comes down to managing that tax liability.
Hmm.
You use the RRSP when your tax rate is high. You use the TFSA when you want tax-free income in retirement.
So what does this all mean for managing income in your 60s and 70s? We talked about how the RIF forces you to take taxable withdrawals, exposing you to longevity risk, the risk of running out of money too soon.
And that raises an important final thought for you, the listener, to consider. If your RIF withdrawals are fully taxable and your TFSA withdrawals are completely tax-free, how might you strategically use the TFSA first during those initial retirement years? By carefully managing when you take taxable RIF income versus tax-free TFSA income, you gain powerful control over your immediate needs and your long-term risk, all while potentially preserving your OAS and GIS benefits. It's something to think about as you map out your own deep dive into financial security.